Lisa stared at the yellow piece of paper stuck to her apartment door. Her heart sank as she read the words eviction notice printed in bold black letters. 3 days. That's all the time she had left before losing the only home she and her mother had known for the past 5 years. She pulled the paper off the door with shaking hands and walked inside. The small apartment felt different now, like it was already saying goodbye to her. The familiar smell of her mother's lavender tea couldn't calm her racing heart this time. "Mom, I'm home," she called out softly, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. "In here, sweetheart," came the weak reply from the bedroom. Lisa found her mother lying in bed, wrapped in the old blue blanket that had become her constant companion since the treatment started. At 52, Maria looked much older than her years. The chemotherapy had taken her thick black hair and left her skin pale and fragile. But her eyes still held that gentle warmth that had always made Lisa feel safe. "How was work today?" Maria asked, struggling to sit up. Lisa forced a smile. "Good, the diner was busy." She didn't mention how her boss had cut her hours again, or how the tips barely covered their daily expenses anymore. She sat on the edge of the bed and took her mother's thin hand in hers. "Mom, we need to talk about something." Maria's eyes grew worried. "What is it?" Lisa pulled out the eviction notice, her hands still trembling. "We have 3 days to pay the rent or we have to leave." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Maria closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, tears were forming. "How much do we owe?" she whispered. $2,000, plus late fees," Lisa's voice cracked. "And your next treatment is scheduled for Friday. The insurance won't cover all of it." Maria tried to get up. "I can go back to work. Maybe the school will let me substitute teach again." "Mom, no." Lisa gently pushed her back down. "The doctor said you need to rest between treatments. Your body can't handle the stress right now." They sat together in the growing darkness. Lisa's mind raced through every possible solution. She had already sold everything valuable they owned. Her car, her grandmother's jewelry, even her laptop. She had taken extra shifts at the diner until her body ached. She had applied for loans, but her credit was ruined from all the medical bills. "There has to be something we can do," Maria said weakly. Lisa squeezed her mother's hand. "Don't worry. I'll figure something out. I always do." But as she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, Lisa felt more lost than ever. She had been taking care of her mother alone since she was 20, when the cancer first appeared. Back then, they had savings and good insurance. Now, 4 years later, they had nothing left but each other. She pulled out her phone and started searching for jobs that paid cash immediately. Her search led her down a path she never thought she would consider. The websites were there, hiding behind innocent-looking ads. Places where women could make money quickly, no questions asked. Lisa's stomach turned as she read through the posts. But then she saw the numbers. $300 for one night. That would cover the rent and her mother's medication for another week. Maybe even enough to buy some groceries. Her finger hovered over the screen. This wasn't who she was. She had always been the good daughter, the responsible one. She worked hard and tried to do everything right. But doing everything right hadn't saved them from this nightmare. She thought about her mother sleeping in the next room, trusting that somehow Lisa would find a way to keep them safe. She thought about the eviction notice and the medical bills piling up on the kitchen table. She thought about the look in her mother's eyes when she had to skip meals so Lisa could eat. With tears streaming down her face, Lisa created a profile. She used a fake name and tried to write something that didn't sound desperate, even though she felt like she was drowning. Her hands shook as she uploaded a photo and set her price. The response came faster than she expected. A message from someone who simply called himself Jack. He seemed different from the others who had contacted her. His message was polite, straightforward. He wanted to meet the next evening at a hotel downtown. Lisa stared at the message for a long time. This was really happening. She was about to cross a line she never thought she would cross. But what choice did she have? She spent the next day in a daze. At work, she spilled coffee on customers and mixed up orders. Her boss, Mrs. Chen, pulled her aside during her break. "Lisa, what's wrong? You're not yourself today." Lisa wanted to tell her everything. Mrs. Chen had always been kind to her, letting her take time off for her mother's appointments and never complaining when Lisa looked tired. But how could she explain what she was about to do? "Just worried about Mom," she said instead. Mrs. Chen nodded, understanding. "The treatments are hard on both of you. If you need anything, you know you can ask." But Lisa couldn't ask for $2,000. She couldn't ask anyone for that much money. This was her burden to carry. That evening, she stood in front of her tiny closet, trying to decide what to wear. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt like her anymore. She settled on a simple black dress and put on makeup to hide how scared she was. "I'm going out for a while," she told her mother. "Where are you going so late?" Maria asked from the couch where she was watching an old movie. "Just meeting a friend. I won't be long." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth, but she couldn't tell her mother the truth. It would break her heart. Lisa took the bus downtown, her stomach churning with every passing block. She had never been to this part of the city before. The streets were busier here, full of bright lights and people who looked like they belonged in a different world. She was supposed to meet Jack at a hotel called the Grand Plaza. As she walked through the fancy lobby, she felt completely out of place. The marble floors and crystal chandeliers reminded her of how far she had fallen from the life she once imagined for herself. Her phone buzzed with a message. "Change of plans. Come outside. I'm in a blue pickup truck." Lisa's heart pounded as she walked back outside. She spotted the truck right away. It looked old but well-maintained, nothing like what she had expected. Through the windshield, she could see a man with dark hair and a beard. This was it, the moment that would change everything. As she walked toward the truck, Lisa whispered a prayer that somehow, some way, this would help save her mother. She had no idea that she was about to meet someone who would change her life in ways she never could have imagined. The truck door opened, and a deep voice said, "Are you Lisa?" She nodded, unable to speak. "Get in. We need to talk." As Lisa climbed into the passenger seat, she had no idea that this man was about to offer her something she had given up hope of ever finding again. A chance at a real life. Lisa's hands trembled as she buckled her seatbelt. The man beside her was nothing like what she had expected. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with gentle brown eyes that seemed kind despite his rugged appearance. His beard was neatly trimmed and his clothes were simple but clean. Most surprising of all, he smelled like pine trees and fresh air, not cologne or cigarettes. "I'm Jake," he said quietly, starting the engine. "Before we go anywhere, I need you to know something important." Lisa's heart was beating so fast she could barely breathe. "What?" "This isn't what you think it is." Jake turned to look at her directly. "I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not going to do anything you don't want to do. I just need you to trust me for a little while." Confusion washed over Lisa's face. "I don't understand. You contacted me through the website. You said you wanted to meet." Jake nodded slowly. "I did contact you, but not for the reason you think. Someone told me about your situation, about your mother's illness and the medical bills." "Who told you?" Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "Mrs. Chen from the diner where you work. She's my aunt." Lisa's mouth fell open. Mrs. Chen had never mentioned having a nephew. She had never mentioned knowing anyone who could help with money problems. "She's worried about you," Jake continued. "She sees how hard you're working, how tired you look. She knows about the eviction notice because she overheard you talking to your mother on the phone during your break yesterday." Tears started forming in Lisa's eyes. She felt embarrassed and grateful and confused all at the same time. "So you know everything. I know enough to understand that you're doing something desperate because you love your mother and you're out of options." Jake's voice was gentle but firm. "And I want to help." Instead of driving toward the hotel district, Jake steered the truck toward the highway leading out of the city. Lisa watched the bright lights fade behind them as they climbed into the hills surrounding the valley. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My place. I want to show you something, and then I want to make you an offer." The road wound through tall pine trees that seemed to stretch up to the stars. Lisa had lived in the city her whole life and rarely ventured into the mountains. The air coming through the slightly open windows smelled clean and fresh, so different from the exhaust fumes and restaurant grease she was used to. After about 30 minutes, Jake turned onto a gravel road that led to a small cabin nestled among the trees. Warm light glowed from the windows, and Lisa could see a wraparound porch with wooden chairs and hanging plants. "This is where you live?" she asked, staring at the cozy scene. "For the past 3 years," Jake said, parking the truck. "After my wife died, I needed to get away from everything that reminded me of her. I found this place and decided to stay." Lisa felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry about your wife." Jake nodded, his expression sad but peaceful. "Thank you. It was hard for a long time, but being up here helped me heal. They walked up the porch steps and Jake opened the front door. The inside of the cabin was warm and inviting, with handmade furniture and a stone fireplace crackling with a gentle fire. Books lined the shelves and family photos sat on the mantel. "Sit down," Jake said, gesturing to a comfortable couch. "I'll make some tea." Lisa perched on the edge of the cushion, still not sure what was happening. This felt like a dream. A few hours ago, she had been preparing to sell herself to a stranger. Now she was sitting in a beautiful mountain cabin, drinking tea with someone who claimed he wanted to help her. Jake returned with 2 steaming mugs and sat across from her in a wooden chair. "Let me tell you why I really brought you here." Lisa wrapped her hands around the warm mug and waited. "I live here with my grandfather," Jake began. "He's 87 years old and not in good health. He needs someone to help take care of him during the day while I'm working. Someone patient and kind who understands what it's like to care for someone you love." "What kind of work do you do?" Lisa asked. "I'm a carpenter. I build custom furniture and do home repairs for people in the area. The work is steady, but it means I'm away from the house most days." Jake leaned forward, his expression serious. "Here's what I'm proposing. You and your mother move in here. There's a guest room that would be perfect for her, and you could have the loft upstairs. In exchange for helping care for my grandfather and keeping the house running, I'll pay for your mother's medical treatments and give you a monthly salary." Lisa nearly dropped her mug. "I don't understand. Why would you do that for strangers?" "Because I know what it's like to feel helpless when someone you love is sick," Jake said quietly. "When my wife was dying, I would have given anything for someone to offer us hope. And because my grandfather is lonely, he was a teacher for 40 years and he misses having people around to talk to." "But the money," Lisa started. "I have money," Jake said simply. "My wife and I owned a successful construction company before she got sick. When she died, I sold my half to my business partner. I have enough to live comfortably and help others when I can." Lisa felt overwhelmed. This is too much. I can't accept such a huge favor from someone I just met. Jake smiled for the first time since he had gotten in his truck. "You're not accepting a favor. You'd be doing me one. My grandfather needs care that I can't provide while I'm working. And honestly, this house feels too quiet sometimes. It could use some life in it again. What about my job at the diner? You could still work there if you want, but you wouldn't have to. The salary I'm offering would be enough for you and your mother to live on." Lisa's mind was spinning. Could this really be happening? Was this man really offering to solve all her problems just like that? "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course, but I do have one condition." Lisa's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. "The catch. You have to stop putting yourself in dangerous situations," Jake said firmly. "No more websites, no more meeting strangers who could hurt you." "Promise me that." Lisa felt tears start to fall. "I promise. I never wanted to do that anyway. I was just so scared." Jake stood up and walked to a desk in the corner. He pulled out a checkbook and wrote something down, then tore out the check and handed it to Lisa. She looked at the amount and gasped. It was enough to cover the rent, the medical bills, and groceries for a month. "This is just to get you started," Jake said, "so you don't have to worry about the eviction while you make your decision." Lisa stared at the check, hardly believing what she was seeing. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, and say you'll let me drive you home safely." As they drove back down the mountain, Lisa felt like she was in a movie. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Good things didn't just fall out of the sky when you needed them most. But as she looked at Jake's profile in the dim light from the dashboard, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally changing. Lisa barely slept that night. She kept staring at the check Jake had given her, wondering if she had dreamed the whole thing. When morning came, she found her mother sitting at the kitchen table, looking at the eviction notice with worried eyes. "Mom, we need to talk," Lisa said. Sitting down beside her, she told her mother everything. About the website, about meeting Jake, about his incredible offer. Maria listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider with each detail. "Sweetheart, this sounds too good to be true," Maria said when Lisa finished. "Are you sure this man can be trusted?" "Mrs. Chen is his aunt, Mom. She's known us for 2 years. She wouldn't let him hurt us." Maria was quiet for a long moment. "And he really wants us to live in his house? Both of us? He has a grandfather who needs care. He thinks you and I would be good for the job." Lisa pulled out her phone and showed her mother the pictures she had secretly taken of the cabin. The cozy living room, The beautiful view from the porch, the peaceful forest surrounding everything, it looks like a fairy tale, Maria whispered. It felt like one too. Mom, we could have a real home again. You could get the best medical care without us worrying about money, and the air up there is so clean and fresh. It might help you feel stronger. That afternoon, Lisa called Jake. Her hands shook as she dialed the number he had written on a piece of paper. I've made my decision, she said when he answered. If you're really serious about this offer, then yes. We'd like to try it. I'm serious, Jake said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. When can you be ready to move? We don't have much to pack. Maybe tomorrow? I'll pick you up at 10 in the morning. And Lisa, you're making the right choice. The next day, Jake arrived with a bigger truck and a warm smile. He helped them load their few belongings, treating their old furniture and worn suitcases like they were precious treasures. When he saw how little they had, his expression grew sad, but he didn't say anything that would make them feel embarrassed. The drive up the mountain felt different in daylight. Lisa could see wildflowers blooming along the roadside and squirrels jumping from tree to tree. Her mother sat in the back seat, staring out the window with wonder. I forgot how beautiful nature could be, Maria said softly. When they reached the cabin, an elderly man was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair. He had white hair and kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He was thin and frail-looking, but his smile was bright and welcoming. Grandfather, I'd like you to meet Lisa and Maria, Jake said as they walked up the porch steps. The old man struggled to stand, and Lisa quickly moved to help him. Please don't get up for us, she said gently. Nonsense, he said in a voice that still carried traces of strength. When lovely ladies come to visit, a gentleman always stands. I'm Henry, and I'm delighted to meet you both. Lisa liked him immediately. There was something about his eyes that reminded her of her own grandfather, who had died when she was 12. Jake showed them around the cabin. The guest room he had prepared for Maria was bright and airy, with a comfortable bed and a view of the forest. The loft where Lisa would stay was cozy and private, with a reading nook by the window and a small desk. This is more space than we've had in years, Maria said, sitting carefully on the bed in her new room. And this is your bathroom, Jake said, opening a door to reveal a clean, modern space. I had it renovated last year to make it easier for grandfather to use. The shower has safety bars and a seat. Lisa noticed how thoughtful everything was. Jake had clearly put effort into making the space comfortable for people who needed extra care. That evening, they all ate dinner together at the wooden table in the kitchen. Henry turned out to be a wonderful storyteller, sharing tales from his 40 years as a high school teacher. He made them laugh with stories about students who tried to cheat by writing answers on their shoes, and he made them think with stories about students who overcame impossible odds to succeed. Teaching was the best job in the world, Henry said, his eyes twinkling. Every day was different, and every student taught me something new. What subjects did you teach? Maria asked. English literature mostly, but I also coached the debate team and directed the school plays. I loved helping young people find their voices. Lisa found herself relaxing for the first time in months. The cabin felt warm and safe, like a real home. After dinner, Jake showed her how to operate the medical equipment he had purchased for Henry's care. He has diabetes and a heart condition, Jake explained quietly while Henry and Maria looked at photo albums in the living room. He needs his blood sugar checked twice a day and help with his medications. The doctor comes once a week for checkups. I can handle that, Lisa said. I learned how to manage medical care when Mom first got sick. I thought you might understand. That's one of the reasons I knew you'd be perfect for this. Over the next few days, Lisa settled into a routine. She woke early to help Henry with his morning medications and blood sugar check. Then she would make breakfast for everyone and tidy the house. In the afternoons, while Jake worked on his carpentry projects in the workshop behind the cabin, Lisa would sit with Henry and Maria on the porch, listening to their conversations about books and life. Her mother seemed to grow stronger every day. The clean mountain air and lack of stress were working like medicine. She laughed more than she had in years, and color was returning to her cheeks. I feel like myself again, Maria told Lisa one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch. I had forgotten what it was like not to worry about money every minute of every day. Lisa nodded, understanding completely. For the first time since her mother's diagnosis, she wasn't constantly calculating bills in her head. She wasn't lying awake at night wondering how they would survive another month. Jake was gone most days, working on various projects around the area. But in the evenings, he would return with stories about his day and sometimes small gifts, fresh vegetables from a client's garden, wildflowers he had picked on his way home, or books he thought Henry might enjoy. "You don't have to do that," Lisa told him one evening when he arrived with a bag of fresh peaches. "I want to," Jake said simply. "It makes me happy to see all of you happy." Lisa was beginning to understand that Jake was the kind of person who found joy in taking care of others. She wondered what had made him that way, and she found herself wanting to know more about the man who had saved her family from disaster. 1 week after they had moved in, Dr. Patterson, Henry's physician, came for his regular visit. While he examined Henry, he also checked on Maria at Jake's request. "Your mother is doing remarkably well," Dr. Patterson told Lisa afterward. "Her color is good, her energy seems improved, and her vital signs are strong. Whatever you're doing here is working." That night, as Lisa sat in her loft looking out at the stars, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. She was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. What she didn't know yet was that her feelings for Jake were growing stronger every day, and that the mountain had more healing to offer than she had ever imagined. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa and her mother moved to the mountain cabin, and Lisa was still waiting for the catch. In her experience, nothing good ever lasted. There had to be something Jake wanted in return. Some hidden agenda she hadn't discovered yet. She found herself studying him when he didn't know she was looking, searching for signs of dishonesty or selfishness, but all she saw was a man who worked hard, treated his grandfather with gentle respect, and seemed genuinely happy to have them there. "You're being paranoid," her mother told her one morning as they prepared breakfast together. "Some people are just good, Lisa. Jake is one of them." "Nobody helps strangers like this without wanting something back," Lisa replied, stirring the pancake batter more aggressively than necessary. "Maybe he wants friendship. Maybe he wants to feel useful. Maybe he just likes having a full house again." Lisa wasn't convinced. She had learned to be suspicious of men's motives, especially men who seemed too good to be true. Her doubts only grew stronger when she discovered the envelope. It was tucked under her door one morning, with her name written on the front in Jake's careful handwriting. Inside was a check for $500 and a note that read, "Your first month's salary. Thank you for taking such good care of grandfather." Lisa stared at the amount, her heart pounding. $500 just for helping around the house and caring for Henry? It was more than she had made working full-time at the diner. She found Jake in his workshop, carefully sanding a piece of oak that would become part of a dining table. "This is too much money," she said, holding up the check. Jake looked up from his work, wood shavings in his dark hair. "It's exactly what we agreed on. We never agreed on a specific amount. You just said you'd pay me a salary. Is it not enough?" Jake asked, looking genuinely concerned. "It's too much. I'm not doing anything that deserves this kind of payment." Jake set down his sandpaper and turned to face her fully. "Lisa, you're taking care of a sick elderly man and keeping house for 3 adults. You're available 24 hours a day in case of emergencies. You cook meals, manage medications, and provide companionship to someone who was lonely. How is that not worth $500 a month?" Lisa shifted uncomfortably. "Because you're already paying for my mother's medical care, and you're giving us a place to live, and you bought us groceries and clothes, and I can afford to do all of that," Jake interrupted gently. "Lisa, I have more money than I need. Using it to help people makes me feel like my wife's death wasn't completely meaningless." This was the first time Jake had mentioned his wife since that first night. Lisa could see pain flicker across his face before he controlled it. "What was she like?" Lisa asked softly. Jake was quiet for a long moment, running his fingers over the smooth wood. "She was the kindest person I ever knew, always looking for ways to help others. She used to say that money was just a tool and the only thing that mattered was how you used it." "How did she die?" "Car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light." Jake's voice was steady, but Lisa could see his jaw tighten. "She was pregnant. We were going to have our first baby." Lisa's heart broke for him. "I'm so sorry, Jake. For a long time I was angry at the world. I couldn't understand why bad things happened to good people while I sat here with more money than I knew what to do with. Then I realized I could honor her memory by doing what she would have done, helping people who needed it." Lisa began to understand. Jake wasn't helping them because he wanted something from them. He was helping them because it helped him heal from his own pain, but understanding his motives didn't make it easier to accept his generosity. Lisa had been taking care of herself and her mother for so long that relying on someone else felt dangerous. Her suspicious nature created problems in small ways. When Jake brought home fresh flowers for the kitchen table, she wondered if he was trying to make her feel obligated to him. When he insisted on driving her mother to her medical appointments, she worried that he was keeping track of how much money he was spending so he could use it against them later. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Lisa was helping Henry with his afternoon exercises when she overheard him talking to Jake in the kitchen. "She doesn't trust you yet," Henry was saying in his quiet voice. "I know," Jake replied. "She's been hurt before. It's going to take time. Maybe you should tell her about the others. I don't want her to feel like she's just another charity case. Or maybe knowing that you've helped other families would prove that you're not expecting anything in return." Lisa crept closer to the doorway, her heart pounding. "The Johnsons' farm was about to be foreclosed," Jake continued. "I helped them refinance. The Martinez family lost their house in a fire, so I paid for them to stay in a hotel until they could find a new place. Mrs. Wong needed surgery she couldn't afford. And you asked for nothing in return from any of them," Henry said proudly. "Nothing except the knowledge that they were okay." Lisa felt ashamed. While she had been looking for hidden motives, Jake had been quietly helping people all over the county. She wasn't his first act of kindness, and she probably wouldn't be his last. That evening, she approached Jake while he was reading on the porch. "I'm sorry," she said, sitting down in the chair next to him. "For what?" "For not trusting you. For looking for reasons to doubt your motives when you've been nothing but kind to us." Jake closed his book and looked at her with those gentle brown eyes. "You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself and your mother. Being careful is what's kept you both safe. But you've done so much for us, and I've been treating you like you're going to hurt us somehow. Lisa, you've been taking care of your mother since you were barely an adult. You've been responsible for everything and everyone. It's not easy to let someone else share that burden even when you want to." His understanding made her feel even worse. "How are you so patient with everyone?" Jake smiled sadly. "Because I know what it's like to feel scared and alone. After my wife died, I didn't trust anyone either. I thought everyone was either pitying me or trying to take advantage of my grief. It took me a long time to let people care about me again. What changed? Grandfather mostly. He moved in with me when he got sick, and he wouldn't let me hide from the world anymore. He taught me that accepting help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Lisa looked through the window at her mother and Henry, who were playing cards at the kitchen table and laughing at something Henry had said. Her mother looked happier and healthier than she had in years. "I want to trust you," Lisa said quietly. "I'm just scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that if I let myself believe this is real, something will happen to take it away. Scared that if I start caring about you and Henry, I'll lose you too." Jake reached over and took her hand. His fingers were rough from years of working with wood, but his touch was gentle. "I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, but I can promise that as long as I'm here, you and your mother will be safe and cared for." For the first time since moving to the mountain, Lisa allowed herself to truly relax. She was beginning to understand that sometimes good things really did happen to people who needed them, and sometimes the people who helped you were doing it, not because they wanted something in return, but because helping others helped heal their own broken hearts. 2 months into their new life on the mountain, Lisa had settled into a comfortable routine. She woke each morning to the sound of birds singing outside her window instead of car horns and sirens. The stress lines around her eyes had softened, and she found herself smiling more often. Her relationship with Henry had grown especially close. The elderly man reminded her of the grandfather she had lost, and she enjoyed their long conversations about books, life, and everything in between. He was sharp as a tack despite his physical frailty, and his stories about his teaching days never failed to entertain her. It was Henry who finally told her the full truth about Jake's past. They were sitting on the porch one afternoon while her mother napped and Jake worked in his shop. Henry was teaching Lisa how to play chess, something she had never learned as a child. "You're a natural at this," Henry said as Lisa captured his bishop. "You think several moves ahead just like Jake does. Is that how he became so successful in business?" Lisa asked, moving her queen into position. Henry was quiet for a moment, studying the chessboard. Jake was always good at planning ahead. But after what happened to Emily, he became almost obsessive about taking care of people. Lisa had heard Jake mention his wife's name only once before. What was she like? Beautiful inside and out. She had this way of making everyone feel special, like they were the most important person in the room. She volunteered at the children's hospital, organized food drives for poor families, and she was always bringing home stray animals. Henry moved his rook, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. When she and Jake got married, I thought I'd never seen two people more perfect for each other. They built their construction company from nothing, working 16-hour days but always finding time to help their neighbors. Jake said she was pregnant when she died, 6 months along. They were so excited about becoming parents. Jake had already started building a nursery in their house, and Emily was knitting blankets and buying tiny clothes. Henry's voice grew heavy with sadness. The night she died, she was coming home from a baby shower for one of her friends. Lisa felt tears stinging her eyes. That's horrible. The worst part was watching what it did to Jake. For months after the funeral, he wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't talk to anyone. He sold the construction company, sold their house, got rid of everything that reminded him of Emily and the baby. Is that when he moved up here? Not right away. First, he just disappeared, took his truck and drove around the country for almost a year. I was so worried about him that I hired a private investigator to make sure he was still alive. Henry captured one of Lisa's pawns, but she barely noticed. She was thinking about Jake, trying to imagine the pain he must have felt. What brought him back? A phone call from my doctor. I'd had a heart attack and Jake was still listed as my emergency contact. He drove straight through from Arizona to get to the hospital. And he decided to stay? I think he realized he couldn't run from his grief forever. And I think he understood that I needed him as much as he needed me. Henry smiled softly. We've been good for each other. He takes care of my body, and I try to take care of his soul. That evening, Lisa found Jake sitting alone on the porch steps, looking out at the forest. She could see the weight of old sadness in his shoulders. Mind if I join you? She asked. Of course not. Jake moved over to make room for her on the step. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the evening sounds of the mountain. An owl hooted somewhere in the distance, and crickets chirped in the grass around the cabin. Henry told me about Emily, Lisa said softly. Jake nodded but didn't speak right away. I don't talk about her much anymore. It used to hurt too much. Does it still hurt? Yes, but differently now. It's more like missing an old friend than feeling like my heart is being ripped out. Lisa thought about that. I think I understand. When my father left, I was angry for years. Now I just feel sad sometimes that he chose not to be part of our lives. Your father left when your mother got sick? Before that, when I was 15, he said he hadn't signed up for a family that required so much work. Lisa's voice was bitter. Turns out he was right about that. Raising a teenager and supporting a sick wife was too much responsibility for him. Jake turned to look at her. That wasn't your fault, Lisa. You and your mother deserved better. I know that now. But for a long time, I blamed myself. I thought if I had been a better daughter, maybe he would have stayed. Is that why you've been so suspicious of me? Because you're waiting for me to leave when things get difficult. Lisa felt heat rise in her cheeks. Maybe. I guess I've learned not to count on people sticking around when life gets complicated. Emily used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when life is easy, Jake said quietly. It's what they do when everything falls apart. Your father failed that test, but you didn't. You took care of your mother and held your family together when you were still a kid yourself. I didn't have a choice. You had lots of choices. You could have put your mother in a state facility and walked away. You could have decided her medical bills weren't your problem. You could have given up when the money ran out. But you didn't. You fought for her. Lisa felt tears starting to form. No one had ever acknowledged how hard those years had been, or praised her for surviving them. The night I met you, I saw someone who reminded me of Emily. Jake continued. Not in how you look, but in how far you were willing to go to protect someone you love. Emily would have done the same thing if she'd been in your situation. You really think so? I know so, and I think she would have liked you very much. They sat together as darkness fell around them, both lost in their own thoughts. Lisa was beginning to understand that Jake's kindness wasn't random. He helped people because he knew what it felt like to lose everything that mattered, and he couldn't stand to watch others go through that pain alone. "Can I ask you something?" Lisa said. "Anything. Why haven't you remarried? It's been 5 years. You're young and you're a good man. Surely there are women who would want to build a life with you." Jake was quiet for so long that Lisa wondered if she had crossed a line. Finally he spoke. "For a long time I thought I didn't deserve to be happy again. Emily and the baby died while I was sitting safely in my office. I couldn't understand why I got to live when they didn't. That's survivor's guilt, Jake. It's normal after trauma. I know that now. I've talked to counselors about it. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different things. And now, do you still feel that way?" Jake looked at her, and in the dim light from the porch lamp, she could see something new in his eyes. Something that made her heart beat faster. "No," he said quietly. "I'm starting to think that maybe I was spared for a reason. Maybe I'm supposed to use the life I was given to help others live theirs." Lisa felt something shift between them in that moment. The careful distance they had maintained was starting to dissolve, replaced by something deeper and more complicated. "I should go check on Mom and Henry," she said, suddenly feeling shy. "Lisa?" Jake called as she reached the door. "Yes? Thank you for listening. It's been a long time since I've talked to someone about Emily. Thank you for trusting me with her story." As Lisa went inside, she realized that she was falling in love with Jake. Not just because he had saved her family, but because she was beginning to see the man beneath the grief. A man who had turned his pain into purpose and his loss into love for others. What she didn't know was that Jake was having the same realization about her. The call came on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Lisa was helping Henry with his morning exercises when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Rodriguez's office, and Lisa's heart immediately started racing. "Lisa, this is Dr. Rodriguez. I need you to bring your mother in today. Her latest test results show some concerning changes." Lisa's world tilted sideways. "What kind of changes? I'd rather discuss this in person."
"Can you be here by 2 o'clock?
The drive down the mountain felt like the longest hour of Lisa's life. Her mother sat quietly in the passenger seat, trying to appear calm, but Lisa could see the fear in her eyes. Jake had insisted on driving them, and his presence in the driver's seat was the only thing keeping Lisa from falling apart completely. Dr. Rodriguez's news was devastating. The cancer had returned, more aggressive than before. Maria would need immediate surgery, followed by an intensive chemotherapy program that would cost far more than her previous treatments. "How much more?" Lisa asked, her voice barely a whisper. "With the surgery, hospital stay, and new treatment protocol, we're looking at approximately $200,000 over the next year." Lisa felt the room spin around her. Even with Jake's help, that amount of money was impossible. She looked at her mother, who had gone completely pale. "There are programs that might help with some of the costs," Dr. Rodriguez continued. "But I want to be honest with you about what we're facing here." The drive back up the mountain was silent except for the sound of rain against the windshield. Lisa stared out the window, her mind racing through impossible calculations. $200,000. How could they possibly manage that much money? That evening, while her mother rested and Henry read quietly by the fire, Lisa sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, researching every possible source of financial assistance. Medical grants, charity programs, fundraising ideas, she looked into everything. But the numbers never added up to enough. Jake found her there at midnight, surrounded by printouts and notes, tears streaming down her face. "Lisa, you need to get some sleep. I can't sleep. I have to figure out how to pay for Mom's treatment." Jake sat down across from her. "You don't have to figure this out alone." "Yes, I do." Lisa's voice was sharper than she intended. "This is my responsibility. My mother, my problem. That's not true anymore. We're a family now, all of us. Henry, your mother, you and me. Families take care of each other." Lisa looked up at him with desperate eyes. "Jake, it's $200,000. That's not asking for help with groceries or rent. That's asking you to bankrupt yourself for people you barely know. You're not people I barely know. You're people I care about." The gentleness in his voice almost broke her resolve, but fear was stronger than hope. "And what happens when the money runs out? What happens when you realize you've spent everything on a lost cause? Your mother is not a lost cause. What if she is?" Lisa's voice cracked. "What if we spend all that money and she dies anyway? What if I let you destroy your financial security for nothing? Jake reached across the table and took her hands. Lisa, listen to me. I have enough money to cover your mother's treatment and still live comfortably for the rest of my life. Emily's life insurance plus the sale of our business and our house left me with more than I'll ever need. But what if the sun doesn't rise tomorrow? What if the mountain disappears overnight? You can't live your life based on worst-case scenarios. Lisa pulled her hands away. That's easy for you to say. You've never had to choose between buying medicine and buying food. You've never had to count every penny and still come up short. You're right. I haven't experienced that kind of poverty. But I have experienced loss, and I know that the worst thing isn't losing money. The worst thing is losing people you love when you could have saved them. Lisa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is too much, Jake. I can't let you do this. Why not? Because I'll owe you everything. Don't you see that? If you pay for her treatment, I'll never be able to repay you. I'll be in debt to you for the rest of my life. Jake's expression grew serious. Is that really what you think? That I'm keeping track of what you owe me? Aren't you? No, Lisa, I'm not. Love doesn't come with a receipt. The word hung in the air between them like a bridge neither of them was quite ready to cross. Jake's eyes widened slightly as if he hadn't meant to say it out loud. Love? Lisa whispered. Jake stood up slowly, his gaze never leaving her face. Yes, love. I love you, Lisa. I love your strength and your determination and the way you care for everyone around you. I love how you make my grandfather laugh and how you've brought life back to this house. I love that you've helped me remember what it feels like to have hope for the future. Lisa felt her heart breaking and soaring at the same time. Jake, you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know that helping your mother isn't charity. It's what people do for the families they love. Tears were streaming down Lisa's face now. I'm scared of what? Of loving you too much. Of depending on you too much. Of losing you like I lost my father. Jake stepped around the table and gently cupped her face in his hands. I'm not your father, Lisa. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen to us. But I can promise that whatever happens, we'll face it together. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. Lisa looked into his eyes and saw something that took her breath away. She saw the future he was offering her. Not just financial security, but real partnership. A life where her burdens became lighter because someone else was willing to share them. I love you too, she whispered. I've been fighting it for weeks, but I love you. Jake smiled, and for the first time since Emily's death, it reached his eyes completely. Then let me help save your mother. Not because you owe me anything, but because she's going to be my family too. Lisa threw her arms around his neck, finally allowing herself to believe that sometimes love really was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. The next morning, Jake called Dr. Rodriguez's office and arranged to meet with the hospital's financial department. By the end of the week, Maria's surgery was scheduled, and Jake had set up a payment plan that would cover every cent of her treatment. But their happiness was about to be tested in ways they never could have imagined. Maria's surgery was scheduled for the first week of November, but just 3 days before the procedure, everything went wrong. Lisa woke up to the sound of her mother crying out in pain. She rushed to Maria's room and found her doubled over, clutching her stomach and barely able to breathe. Mom, what's wrong? Lisa asked, panic rising in her throat. Something's not right, Maria gasped. The pain is so much worse than before. Jake was already on the phone with 911 before Lisa could even ask. The ambulance arrived within 20 minutes, but to Lisa it felt like hours. She held her mother's hand as the paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher, whispering reassurances she didn't really believe herself. At the hospital, Dr. Rodriguez met them in the emergency room with grim news. The cancer had spread faster than anyone had anticipated. Maria needed emergency surgery immediately, not in 3 days. The tumor was pressing against vital organs, and waiting even another day could be fatal. But the surgery we planned was already going to cost everything, Lisa said, her voice shaking. How much more will emergency surgery cost? Dr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Emergency procedures are significantly more expensive. We're looking at an additional $100,000, possibly more if complications arise. Lisa felt the world crashing down around her. $300,000 total. Even Jake couldn't cover that much money without seriously damaging his future security. She found Jake in the hospital waiting room, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. He was talking to someone about liquidating investments, selling property, accessing every possible source of funds. Jake, stop, Lisa said when he ended the call. I'm working on it. I can sell some land I own in Colorado and I have some stocks that… No? Lisa's voice was firm despite the tears streaming down her face. I can't let you do this. Lisa, we've been through this already. That was before it became $300,000. Jake, that's your future. Your security. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick and need that money for yourself? Jake stopped pacing and took her hands. Then I'll deal with that when it happens. Right now, your mother needs surgery. And what if it doesn't work? What if we spend all that money and she dies anyway? What if the cancer comes back in 6 months and we're right back where we started? Then at least we'll know we tried everything. Lisa pulled away from him, her mind racing. There had to be another way. There had to be something she could do that didn't involve destroying Jake's financial future. That's when she remembered the website, the place where desperate people went when they had no other options. I need some air, she told Jake, and walked out of the hospital before he could follow her. In the parking lot, Lisa pulled out her phone and did something she had sworn she would never do again. She logged onto the Escort website and created a new profile. This time she set her price much higher. If she could find enough clients, if she could work quickly enough, maybe she could raise a significant portion of the money herself. Her phone rang within minutes. Then again, and again. By the time Jake found her in the parking lot an hour later, Lisa had booked herself with 3 different men over the next 2 days. What are you doing out here? Jake asked, sitting down on the bench beside her. Lisa couldn't look at him. Just getting some air. Lisa, look at me. Reluctantly, she turned to face him. Jake's eyes were kind but concerned. Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. You have that same desperate look you had the night I met you. You're planning something dangerous. Lisa's resolve crumbled. I can't let you spend $300,000 on my mother. It's not fair to you. So what's your alternative? Lisa couldn't tell him the truth. She couldn't admit that she was prepared to go back to selling herself to strangers if it meant protecting his future. I'll figure something out. Jake studied her face for a long moment. Promise me you won't do anything without talking to me first. Lisa hesitated. Jake, promise me, Lisa, whatever you're planning, we'll figure out a better way together. I promise. She lied. That night, while Jake stayed at the hospital and her mother recovered from emergency surgery, Lisa met her first client at a hotel downtown. The money would help, but it wasn't nearly enough. She would need to work for months to raise even a fraction of what they needed. The second night was worse. The client was rougher, less respectful. Lisa endured it by thinking about her mother lying in the hospital bed, depending on her to find a way to pay for the treatment that could save her life. She was walking to her car after the second encounter when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Lisa. She turned around to find Jake standing in the hotel parking lot, his face a mixture of hurt and anger. How did you find me? She whispered. I followed you. I've been watching you for 2 days, hoping I was wrong about what you were doing. Lisa felt shame wash over her like a physical force. Jake, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you broke your promise to me? Can you explain why you'd rather sell yourself to strangers than let someone who loves you help your family? It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Jake's voice was rough with emotion. Do you think so little of me that you believe I'd keep track of every dollar I spend on your mother's care? Do you think I'm the kind of man who would hold medical bills over your head for the rest of your life? No, of course not. Then why are you here instead of letting me handle the hospital bills? Lisa couldn't answer because the truth was too complicated to explain. She was here because she loved him too much to let him sacrifice everything for her family. She was here because she was terrified of owing someone that much. She was here because a lifetime of disappointment had taught her that people always left when the cost of staying became too high. I was trying to protect you, she said finally. By destroying yourself, by going back to the one thing that almost killed your spirit in the first place. Lisa started crying then, deep sobs that came from a place of exhaustion and fear and love all tangled together. Jake pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she cried. Lisa, listen to me. I sold the land in Colorado this morning. I liquidated my investment portfolio this afternoon. Your mother's treatment is paid for, completely, every single penny. But that's everything you have. No, it's not. I still have this. He tilted her chin up so she was looking into his eyes. I still have you and your mother and my grandfather. I still have a house full of people I love and who love me back. That's worth more than any amount of money. What if you need that money someday? Then I'll figure out how to earn more. Lisa, money can be replaced. People can't, your mother can't. Lisa realized that Jake was offering her something she had never had before. Unconditional love. Not love that came with conditions or debts or expectations of repayment. Just love, pure and simple. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I broke my promise. Just promise me you'll never do this again. Promise me that from now on we face everything together. I promise. For real this time. As they drove back to the hospital together, Lisa understood that she had just received the greatest gift of her life. Not Jake's money, but his faith in their future together. His willingness to risk everything for the people he loved. And for the first time in years, Lisa allowed herself to believe that everything was going to be okay. 1 year later, Lisa stood in front of the mirror in her loft room, adjusting the simple white dress she had chosen for the most important day of her life. Outside her window, the mountain meadow was filled with wildflowers, and the morning sun painted everything in golden light. You look beautiful, sweetheart, her mother said from the doorway. Lisa turned to see Maria watching her with tears of joy in her eyes. The chemotherapy had been hard, but it had worked. Maria's latest scan showed no sign of cancer, and her strength had returned completely. Her hair had grown back thicker and curlier than before, and the color had returned to her cheeks. How are you feeling, Mom? Like the luckiest woman in the world. I get to see my daughter marry the man who saved our lives, Lisa smiled, thinking about how much had changed since that desperate night when she had first met Jake. The woman she had been then, scared, desperate, willing to sacrifice anything for her mother's survival, felt like a stranger now. Are you nervous? Maria asked a little. Good nervous, though. I remember feeling the same way when I married your father. Maria's expression grew thoughtful. I was so young then, so sure that love was enough to overcome any problem. I was wrong about your father, but I was right about love being the most important thing. Do you think Dad ever regrets leaving us? I hope he does. But more importantly, I hope you never doubt that his leaving had nothing to do with you and everything to do with his own weaknesses. Lisa hugged her mother tightly. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now we'd better get downstairs before Henry starts the ceremony without us. They walked down the stairs together to find the cabin transformed. Jake had spent weeks building a beautiful archway of pine boughs on the front porch, and Henry had strung lights throughout the trees surrounding the house. The guest list was small, just Mrs. Chen and her husband, Dr. Rodriguez, and his wife, and a few neighbors who had become friends over the past year. But the most important people were already there. Henry sat in his wheelchair at the front of the makeshift aisle, wearing his best suit and the biggest smile Lisa had ever seen. He had insisted on officiating the ceremony himself, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. And there was Jake, standing beneath the archway of pine boughs, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. He wore a simple dark suit, and his hair was neatly combed, but it was the expression on his face that took her breath away. He was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The music started, a simple guitar melody played by one of their neighbors, and Lisa began walking down the aisle. Her mother walked beside her, since they had both agreed that Maria should be the one to give Lisa away. When they reached the front, Henry cleared his throat and began to speak in his strong, clear voice. We are gathered here today to witness something beautiful, the joining of two people who have already proven that love is stronger than fear, stronger than pain, and stronger than any obstacle life can throw at them. Lisa looked into Jake's eyes and saw her whole future there, a future filled with quiet mornings on the mountain, evening conversations on the porch, and the deep peace that came from knowing she was truly loved. Jake and Lisa have written their own vows, Henry continued. Jake, would you like to go first? Jake took Lisa's hands in his and spoke directly to her, as if they were the only two people in the world. Lisa, a year ago I thought my life was over. I thought the best I could hope for was to exist quietly until my time was up. Then you walked into my life and everything changed. You brought light back into my world. You brought laughter back to my house. You brought hope back to my heart. Jake's voice grew stronger as he continued. I promise to love you not just when times are easy, but especially when they're hard. I promise to be your partner in everything, to share your burdens and multiply your joys. I promise to never let you face anything alone again. Lisa was crying now, but they were tears of happiness. When it was her turn to speak, she found her voice steady and strong. Jake, you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You gave me and my mother a home when we had nowhere to go. You gave us security when we had nothing. But most importantly, you gave me love when I had forgotten what it felt like to be truly cherished. She squeezed his hands, remembering the night they had met and how afraid she had been. I promised to trust you. Even when my old fears try to convince me that good things don't last, I promise to let you love me. Even when I don't feel like I deserve it, I promise to build a life with you that honors the love we've found and the family we've created together. Henry beamed at them both. By the power vested in me by the internet in the state of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jake, you may kiss your bride. Jake cupped Lisa's face in his hands and kissed her gently, and the small crowd erupted in cheers and applause, but Lisa barely heard them. All she could focus on was the man who had changed her life completely, who had turned her darkest moment into the beginning of her greatest happiness. The celebration continued into the evening. Mrs. Chen had prepared an amazing feast, and their neighbors provided music and dancing under the stars. Henry told embarrassing stories about Jake's childhood, and Maria shared memories of Lisa growing up. But the most perfect moment came near midnight, when Jake and Lisa found themselves alone on the porch, watching the last of their guests drive away down the mountain road. How does it feel to be Mrs. Jake Morrison? Jake asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. It feels like coming home, Lisa said, leaning back against his chest. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the forest that had become their sanctuary. Lisa thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that desperate night when she had been willing to sell herself for $300 to this moment when she felt like the richest woman in the world. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Mrs. Chen hadn't told you about my situation? Lisa asked. All the time. And every time I think about it, I'm grateful that the universe brought us together when we needed each other most. Do you think Emily would be happy for us? Jake was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. I think Emily would love you. I think she'd be glad that I found someone who makes me want to be the best version of myself. And I think she'd be proud of the way you honor her memory by helping others. They walked inside together, past the living room where Henry was already asleep in his recliner, past the guest room where Maria was reading peacefully in bed. They climbed the stairs to the loft that was now their shared bedroom, and Lisa marveled at how perfectly her life had turned out. 6 months later, Dr. Rodriguez would give Maria a clean bill of health and declare her officially cancer-free. Henry would live for 3 more happy years, surrounded by the family he had always wanted. And Jake would start a small foundation in Emily's name, helping other families facing medical crises. But that night, as Lisa fell asleep in her husband's arms, surrounded by the sounds of the mountain and the warmth of home, she knew that she had found something precious beyond measure. She had found a love that was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, a family that would never abandon her, and a peace that would last for the rest of her life. The desperate young woman who had once been willing to sell herself for $300 was gone forever. In her place was a woman who knew her true worth, who understood that she deserved to be loved completely and unconditionally. And as she drifted off to sleep, Lisa whispered a quiet thank you to whatever force had guided her to that blue pickup truck on the worst night of her life. 'Cause sometimes when you're at your lowest point, when you think you have nothing left to lose, that's exactly when life decides to give you everything you never knew you needed. Sometimes, rock bottom becomes the solid foundation on which you build the rest of your life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that foundation is built on love.